how to tape the thumb. So there's a few reasons why you might want to tape the thumb from pain, but if you're hypermobile, one of the biggest reasons you're probably going to want to tape the thumb is because this kind of first CMC joint becomes a little bit irritated. So what happens is, because the hands aren't a very good structure, there's a lot of problems with hands, lots of small bones, lots of ligaments, not much in the way of muscles. What happens is, over time, with laxity here, the thumb kind of drops. Now, Johnny isn't hypermobile, so if I smooth across his hand here, I hit this first CMC joint. But if you look at, say, my hands, I kind of just ride right over this first CMC joint. So in kind of rehab as well, a lot of people focus on the wrong things. They want to be getting the thumb back up. So one of the kind of ways that I like to tape the thumb is to tape this thumb with the thumb out of a drop position. We tape it here. That means you can use KT tape over a couple of weeks to help train you how to write properly. Because what happens a lot of times, people with hypermobility, when they write, they end up really aggravating the CMC joint and the other joints. It all becomes inflamed. And then you kind of have an immobile thumb, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to tip the thumb up into the right position. That's going to let all the inflammation die down in the first CMC joint. It'll help train you how to actually keep the thumb in the right position when you write, so you can write for longer. And more importantly, because KT tape's quite elastic, you're still going to be able to move, get the blood flow in there, get the oxygen in there. Nerves really like oxygen. The more oxygen they have, they're more tolerant of things like stretch and vibration, chemicals, pressure. Okay, so for this first taping, we're going to need 2 bits of tape. Remember, around the edges of the tape so they don't get caught. We, on average, use our hands about 2,500 to 3,000 times a day. So the chances of the edges getting pulled up if the square is quite high. So we're going to need 2 same length bits of tape. More importantly, though, you just straighten your fingers, Johnny, should just fit in your hand. If we do this, this is going to go pretty smooth. So first thing we want is a nice anchor point for the wrist. Okay, we're going to take our tape. We're going to tear through this side bit. We're going to peel the tape back. This makes our life a little bit easier in about a minute's time. And then we're going to completely peel this part. Right, this is just going to overlay the wrist. Doesn't matter if you're coming from this side or this side, doesn't really matter too much. Just get that tape on. Just give it a little bit of a rub, activate the adhesive in the tape. Put your hand over it. I'm going to pull down the tape, leaving the end intact. Okay. Now we've got a hold of this tape. Remember, if your fingers touch the tape, it's going to be chaos. Keep a hold of the paper. And we're just going to, with about 50% tension, we're just going to wrap the wrist. Okay. Now, anchor points, tape down points, shouldn't have much in the way of tension. Okay. Now, all this is for is to just keep the wrist in a good position before we get to the thumb. Okay. Now, see how I'm kind of coming onto the thumb? Half and half. Okay. Johnny's wrist joint's about there. 50%, 50%. Okay. Don't just stick it on the actual wrist. We want it on over the actual joint. Now, this one gets a little bit more complicated. What I want us to do is to take this tape and we're going to cut straight down the middle. Don't worry if it's not, if one side's a little bit thicker than the other side, but we're going to stop around here. So it should look like a little pair of legs. Now, what I would say is fold it over and just round the very top off. All right. Now we have a nice professional little piece of tape. Okay. We're going to flip over. We're going to tear the top part off, which is going to be our anchor point. Remember, don't forget to kind of fold the tape over there. Just makes life a little bit easier. Try to keep your fingers off the tape. There we go. What we're going to do is we're going to tape this down onto the tape that we've just put on the wrist. When we're taping, it's kind of generally a good rule to try and avoid sticking the tape on as much skin, as possible. Try and stick it on as least amount of skin as possible. So if we can attach it to tape that's already on there, even better. Right, now, keep in mind the aim of the game. The aim of the game is to get this thumb up, okay? So what I'm gonna have Johnny do is just use these muscles on the back of his hand to put his thumb up. Now, with the tape, I want you to really think about what we're doing here, okay? We need more tension pulling the thumb this way than tension pulling the thumb into a drop position. So the very first thing that we're going to do is grab this lower one, okay? We're going to tear the tape off it. We're going to grab the end, okay? And what we want to do is just wrap it around the thumb. Sorry, Johnny. I'm going to wrap it around the thumb this way, okay? And we want to pull about 50–60% tension on the tape to help pull this thumb this way, okay? So I'm just going to guide it with my hand under. I'm keeping that 50–60% tension on. And I'm going to keep that tension. And I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to keep coming. I'm going to keep coming. I'm going to keep coming. And then I'm going to tip it down. Remember, we want to rub the tape, activate the adhesive. All right, now we're looking quite smart. Now, this one, when we pull, 60% of tension again, but once we get to here, okay, this little web of Johnny's kind of thumb, we're going to just no tension it, no tension. And we're just going to very gently, again, remember, try and stick to the tape that's already on there. Easy peasy. All right, so now, if Johnny does relax his thumb, stays in a good position. We haven't immobilized his thumb, okay? It still has a little bit of movement. He can still move the wrist. Thing is, when you put things like splints on and casts, you just lock the wrist down to stop the blood flow going in there, the correct amount, and it can get achy and can kind of aggravate things, irritate nerves. Okay, T-tape gives you a nice way to just keep the thumb nice and mobile, but mobile with a nice sensory tactile cue. More importantly, gives you that kind of sensory feedback that everybody craves. And more importantly, if Johnny was to pretend to write there, the tape is going to stop him from going too far with that first CMC joint, causing inflammation and causing massive issues. But yeah, this super simple technique. It doesn't take up the entire hand. It's literally just holds that. And what you should find is that the wrist and the joints up here are held in place properly. They're not immobilized. You've still got movement in them, still got a bit of mobility. Helps the pain come down, and it keeps the joint nice and stable.